Oh.
Well, welcome everybody to Relationship Matters. If you can believe it, season 3. This is the 3rd season of Relationship Matters, and we're changing it up this year. As you can already see, I have a co-host, my very, very close friend, like a brother, Chris Dollinger. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here.
Yeah, we just we thought, thinking about it this year, I just felt like it would be fun to have a co-host, and why not a very close personal friend for over 30 years. We've been best friends and like brothers, and we banter pretty good, and we just thought, hey, why don't we team up on this thing? We're still going to be talking relationships, but all kinds of relationships. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we wanted to just come on today really and introduce you to Chris. And what's funny is, Chris, you were a guest. I can't remember which season it was, whether it was 1 or 2, but you were a guest on there, and you got some ribbing from people because we were a little too formal, because they all know us and they know we banter a lot. So we just want everybody to know, like, this is just going to be two friends talking about relationships, but it's also, we're going to have guests. We're going to record some interviews, and then we're going to dissect them with each other and just see what we each take. Chris and I see things from very different views and viewpoints, and so sometimes it gets kind of fun, and we don't mind bantering, so don't think we're fighting. We're just bantering, and that will all be great. And so, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell everybody about yourself.
Sounds good, Mark. First of all, wow, look at those 2 pictures of us if you on the promo stuff. Like, what are we, 26 or something in those pictures when you look at us on the screen right now? Thank you for making me look great, and you even better than that.
Somebody had to.
But like you said, I mean, we've been longtime friends. In 3 weeks, I'll be married 38 years to my wife. I've got 3 sons, and I live in Alberta. I've been in the tech world for about almost 30 years now. I'm an executive in a global tech company at this particular point, and enjoying that in every minute of the day and doing what I'm doing. And I think that if anybody wanted to get a glimpse into who Chris Dollinger is, I'll say it this way, and I always do this in our corporate meetings and everything. What's interesting about me? Well, the one tidbit you might take away, is the fact that I am still an 80s heavy metal rocker, meaning I'm a lead guitar player. I play in a rock band. I play in a church band. Everything is 80s, Van Halen, I put Def Leppard into every song I do. So what you'll get is a bit of a flavor of Chris Dollinger in all types of shapes and sizes and forms today. So hope that you walk away with something interesting today.
Yeah, well, that is funny, because when you meet Chris, you've and then hear that he's like an 80s glam rock fanatic, it's kind of contradictory, and it's kind of funny. And so you've been in the tech sector for a long time, and that's actually how we met. Chris and I met through work originally, and that's a funny story. Do you remember the first time we met?
Yeah, I actually do. We were at a conference in Kelowna, BC, for a company called Cantel at the time. And we were sitting in that conference, and I don't know how we struck up a conversation, if we were actually just sitting beside each other or not. But I know that all of a sudden we had some conversation. I can't remember what we talked about, but I do know that when we walked away, I think you wanted to say, if you ever want to come and work for me, give me a call. And I think that
Yeah.
that's where it kind of started. Did I miss anything, Mark?
No, I just remember though that like you were so outspoken and loud, and I thought, man, this guy is just so obnoxious and whatnot. And then we struck up a conversation, and I realized, man, he commanded the room, and I thought, man, I got to get him to come work for me. At the time, I owned a telecommunications company and was the Cantel dealer for cell phones and whatnot. And I remember just trying, how can I poach this guy? And that's actually what happened. We ended up getting together. I think I remember the story. I went up to see you in Vernon at the time, and we just kind of hit it off. And boy, has it been a journey since then. And so you came to work for me, which is interesting in itself, that our friendship started as me being your boss. And I kind of like that. I think I still am in some ways, but yeah, so that was what struck out to me. But my goodness, that was those were the days, eh? Yeah, Mike Chisholm, my friend here in Kelowna, he just said, "Cantel, that's a blast from the past. They became Rogers, right?" And that's correct. They became Rogers, and they were Cantel, and it was at the time I think TELUS had the BC Mobility or something it was called, or it was even actually before that. And I remember I was one of the very first, if not the first, dealer in the Okanagan, because I partnered with the guy in the coast that had a Cantel dealership, and that's how I ended up selling phones here in the Okanagan. And then we branched into business telephone systems, and that was a bit your experience, and that's why I recruited you. And so we started doing that together.
Well, what's funny about that, just to put things in perspective for your audience, I'm not sure what the demographic is and everything like that, but we were selling cell phones for $5,000 at the time. So imagine you getting yourself the latest iPhone for free, and we were selling some clunky little whatever it was for $5,000 and $1 a minute at the time. So anybody that's listening to us that can remember those days with the big phones and everything, that's
Yep.
what you and I started with together, right?
Yeah, Mike commented. He said, "Hooray for the bag phones!" I used to have one of those because it was it had it was you got better signal, and so I remember I wore it around my like a bag on the side of me, and I thought I was so cool. And I found a picture recently. We lost, we had a fire and we lost all our pictures in the fire, but people were sending me pictures digitally, and I got one of me with that stupid strap with the phone, the 3-watt phone or whatever, and I would walk around with it on my hip. It was so funny. We thought we were so cool back then. I remember when the flip phone, the Motorola flip phone came out, and man, that was, I thought we were so cool because we could flip it open and talk on it. Anyway, those were interesting times because in that era, we were really driving the business, but we developed a friendship in that. And of course, this is Relationship Matters. And I thought it was interesting. Like, Chris, we've been friends for 30 years. And in that time, we lost that business. We ended up going bankrupt, and I had to fire you. And somehow we've stayed friends all these years, even so. I remember, to get you up, I enticed you. We had bought a rental property, and we let you and your wife and family move into it. And then, of course, you had to move back to Vernon after the whole debacle. And my goodness, we've been through some really heavy stuff together.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. I remember you coming to me and, you just couldn't do anything anymore. You had hung on for as long as you could. And now my livelihood and my young family was going to be affected immediately and everything like that. But I think what was interesting is now that we've gotten older and we look back at those times, and I'm sure we'll chat about a few other ones, is that whatever we started and created as friendship, we were always able to separate the business from the friendship, meaning we were always friends, but business was business, and that is very difficult in anything nowadays. And I think that, when you said, "Hey," and I'm like, I don't even know how to pay my rent next, week or whatever like that. it was kind of like we were focusing more on the survival of what we needed to do than what was happening, because you already were going through your stuff too. So I think that we had some empathy in that situation, and that was the first start of a few rocky. Mind you, we haven't had a lot of rocky roads. We've had a lot of interesting stuff, but a few rocky things in our 30 years as friends, right?
Yeah, and I think you hit a very important principle there, is that we held the friendship or the relationship above whatever was going on at the time. And I think that's one of the reasons we could stay friends for so long. It hasn't been all smooth. There's times that you've irritated the heck out of me, and and I'm sure there's times that I probably irritated you too, one or two at least. And but you're not an easy guy to be a friend with, like it's not. You're so
Long-term investment.
opinionated.
I'm a
It's like
long-term investment.
I remember you said to me one time, you said, Mark, you got to realize everybody deserves my opinion. And it was interesting because you had a way of letting me let my hair down. Didn't matter what I was doing, where I was at, how professional I had to be. I always could get on a call with you and we would be laughing and we'd be crying. We'd be laughing so hard. And I think that that's really, when we talk about friendship, we need friends that are going to go to the mat for us. We need friends that are going to stand with us, but we also need friends that are going to call us out when we need it. And I think
Absolutely.
that you and I have done that. You've called me out so many times on stuff, and I've certainly called you out on stuff and whatnot. And I think that somehow we can receive it from each other, because I think we hold the relationship above whatever it is we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, we found that through our connection, we genuinely cared about each other and each other's families. We'll share some stories about that to give examples as we go through the podcast. And I think that was we built a very strong foundation right away. Like with any relationship, it takes work, right? And I think we just chose to do the work because we saw the value and what it was. And here we are, like in all these years, I think what's really funny for the audience is that I'd love to ask you, like, if you have good friends and have had friends for a long time, how often do you stay in contact? Because Mark and I was thinking about this the other night, Mark. We literally, if we averaged it out, we literally talk to each other at least once a week. Once a week.
Yeah.
I may not talk to my mom once a week. I'm not saying that out loud. But you and I
your mom
talk to
likes
each other.
me more than you anyway, so that's all right.
Yeah, well, it's true. Yeah, exactly. But we talk at least once a week. And you think about that when you take that over the course of the years that we are together, that line of communication is quite interesting when you think about how we communicate with people today in our relationships, right? Yeah. So connection was really important, I think, as part of us being able to care for each other and each other's families.
Yeah, I think so. And our kids, your kids call me uncle, and my kids call you Uncle Chris, and or Uncle D. They like calling you Uncle D. And we were that close, but I think that the elements that went into a friendship like that was intentional communication. We did not let a lot of time. There were seasons where we might go a couple of months without talking, and then we'd be on a phone and it'd be like we were never apart, because we've rarely ever lived in the same city, which is really interesting, because we lived in the same city when we like when you came to work for me and we worked together, but that was the only time, and that was only a couple of years of the 30. So it like we've lived in different cities, so we have had to be very intentional about connecting when if one's in the other person's town, we're going to connect. So so I think that's an important piece, that we can call each other out, we can support each other, we hold that relationship above everything else, but also that we would be intentional about communicating and staying connected. And I think that a lot of people drift apart and drift away from each other, and when they don't have something common to go after. Like you and I started off because we worked together, so we had a common mission that developed the friendship. But the friendship needs to go beyond the mission. It needs to go really to the heart of supporting one another and caring about each other. And I think, by the way, in today's world, and with all the mental health issues that even men face. Speaking of Mike Chisholm, he's on here. He's the host of HeCast, and he's doing some amazing work with people, men making it okay to be not okay. And you and I, Chris, have gone through some of that where we had to support each other in times when we were not doing well mentally.
Well, I remember in 2010, I was on a massive pursuit to climb the corporate ladder, and I said that I needed to get to a VP level by a certain age and everything. And so I did what a lot of guys will do, right? Especially in my sector, the tech sector. You work hard, you go like crazy, so you sacrifice sometimes the family a little bit in order to keep doing what you do and everything. And I woke up one day in the president of the company's house that I was staying at, literally paralyzed. And not to get into that whole story, but what ended up happening, as you know, Mark, is not only did I physically break down, my body broke down, but emotionally and mentally I broke down. And I'll tell you this, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I have to say this. And why I'm ashamed is because I think opposite now. It's up to that point, anything to do with mental illness or, you not having the stamina as a man to get through anything. I mean, if people were breaking down, you remember what I would say, I'd be like, oh, suck it up, princess, and all that kind of stuff. And here I find myself in a 2.5-year period, my wife working 3 jobs to keep our family going, me in the fetal position watching the aquarium channel on Shaw TV, which, by the way, there's 7 fishes that I used to watch on a regular basis. The red one was Sammy, I called him. He was my favorite. It's funny how you remember that stuff, right? And I'm broken down to nothing in 2.5 years. What was that? I named the fishes because, they're in that continuous loop, like the Fireplace channel. And I'm just like,
no, I've never watched it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well,
but it's okay enough. Okay.
So when we talk about, I share that quick story because obviously I have a completely opposite perspective of that now. And interesting enough, in the corporate world, you don't get a lot of men opening up, but I find a lot of men opening up. And when they hear that story, I'm 6'5", 255 pounds. I got a loud voice, and all of a sudden kind of, sort of perceive me as maybe a guy that has it all together, who then didn't have it all together, broke down. It has opened up a tremendous amount of conversations. But I do remember this, and let's to share a story about friendship. Here I am, broken down, barely affording to live, gobbled up all of our savings. The story goes on and on and on. Today is not the day to share that. And you and another guy that I knew decided to come out, stop everything you did, and drive out from BC to Alberta and spend a week in my house just sitting with me. Meaning that you didn't come to fix me. You didn't try to, give me a bunch of advice, you guys. You came in there, you filled my fridge up, you supported my wife, in the heavy load that she was. You supported me. And while I'm in this, I don't know how to say it, but my funk that I was in, right?
Yeah.
And those are some of the many, many types of turning point moments that you and I have had, and I'm sure others have had that in their life, where you truly believe and truly understand what friendship is. The sacrifice and the compromise and all the things that come into place to spend a week with me, as me doing that. And I don't know, Mark, I mean, it might have been hard for you because you always had seen me as this big guy, light up the room. And here I am, like I'm not going to say I was a hot mess. That's not what I was going to say, but I'm a mess right on my couch.
You were a hot mess, but it was, but those things happen in life, right? We go through those things, but what we do as men is generally pull back and we hide, and we don't want anybody to know because of that facade and that perception that somehow we are strong. And that, especially for you, that was shocking because you've always presented that. Like, even, listen, I can read you like a book, my friend. And so you can't hide much from me, but you would try to put on the bravado or put on the, everything's okay. And I knew it wasn't. But that was a breaking moment for you. And it was an opportunity for me to show the brotherhood in an appropriate way. I'm not the hero in this story, the hero in this story is that you actually allowed me to come, and our other friend to come and to sit with you, because that would have been the most embarrassing thing for you probably that you ever went through. You regularly embarrass yourself, which is kind of funny, but not like not like that, right? Like, and so it was such an honor and a privilege. And how do you not bond closer? How do you not connect more when you go through something like that? And folks, I want you to understand, we are totally sharing our story with you today, but but understand this is about relationships. So I want you to really capture what we're saying. Some of these principles, some of these thoughts, and these stories are not to brag, they're to inspire you that maybe you need that friend in your life, and you could call on that somebody. You have to be open to the friendship to get it. And you have to provide it to receive it. And I found that out. I was not very good at receiving, on the receiving end of things. I always wanted to be the one on the giving end. And it wasn't until I learned how to receive that I could actually really benefit others by giving. And that is a really important principle, because the same thing back, Chris, I remember there was a time when we were really in financial struggle, because we were living by faith, in a sense. We were doing this youth work and different stuff where we weren't getting paid, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had that pride in me as well. I didn't want my best friend to know I was struggling financially and put the burden on you, because I knew if I told you, you'd do something about it. You'd respond. And I didn't want to guilt you into anything. And so I remember one time we were on the phone, and it came out. You dragged it out of me, basically. And like the next day there's an e-transfer, or however we did things back then. I guess there was no e-transfers, but there was a check in the mail, whatever. And you helped us out. You and Lori have helped Sandy and I so many times financially. And that was, for me, that was hard to receive. And yet it broke something in me. It allowed me to learn how to give better and to be a better friend.
Yeah, I like what you said, Mark, when you said we're not here to tell stories for the sake of stories. I mean,
yeah.
Everybody's story is unique and has a power to it. I think the key is to understand why these stories are so important. And in that particular instance of what I shared about that, and again, and I'll speak to men a little bit more in this call today, because of who I deal with on a regular basis in the high-end corporate world and everything, is that there is still a tremendous amount of pride and a strength-based positioning from a man's perspective, and we have to be in control, and so on and so forth. And what I've learned is that, and I'm still not there, by the way, 100%, but it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to cling on to those that you trust dearly, that you have a friendship with. Because I remember now, and you know this too, Mark, is when you don't tell a friend what you're going through, and you put the bravado on, and they can't see past that, and then they find out where you're at, that really can do some damage to the relationship. Because then it was, well, why didn't you trust me to tell me? Why would you not allow me to help you?
Totally. That's a great point, Chris. That's such a great point. We in a sense rob somebody of, it's a relational breach not to ask for help when you need it. And it's also a relational breach to ask for help and always expect it and not give it. So it's such a open communication and being honest with each other is such a great way. I think that's one of the reasons we've been able to keep this friendship going alive and growing all these years. We've also had a lot of laughing times. I think laughter helps relationships too, and fun. Do you have any memories of anything like that really was funny that we did that was ridiculous?
Well, that's the problem, is I just turned 60, so I'm finding that the memory bank is not as active or as vibrant as it used to be. I'm sure as we continue to talk, I'm going to jump in on something ridiculous, but I know that we have had so many crazy conversations. I think the key to it is, like, just on a basic premise is, like, I'll call you because my wife and I will have had a conversation or a discussion, and it has gone sideways, and it's about the most ridiculous thing and so on, and I'm like, and then you're listening to me just beak off like a dingbat. And at the end of the day, you kind of setting me straight, and then us laughing like crazy about how stupid that was, and so on and so forth. But nothing jumps. But I tell you, I'm sure as we talk, I'll have a couple of little nuggets to pull out for
I'll throw them in when you remember them.
Saturday.
But my biggest thing is just like how outlandishly you say things sometimes. Like it's like it's almost coming out of your mouth, and you'd like to catch it before it gets any further, but it's too late. And there's so many times that I'm laughing, crying, because you're saying something and you're real serious about it, but it's so silly, and I'm laughing, and you're like, "What are you laughing at?" It's like, anyway, those are funny.
Well, I came up with this the other day for some reason, and I shared it with you, and you kind of chuckled. Is that I guess you're right, because I have a way of saying some things that I don't even know. My sons are like that too, and I'm sort of how do I do this? I'll say it this way. If you know 80s rock bands, I'm kind of the spiritual version of Van Halen, meaning I'm the good version of Van Halen. But if you've ever seen Van Halen, they're insane. So at the end of the day, some of the things that I do and say, I understand. I have no idea how I get away with it.
Well, we often call you the Enigma. So
yeah,
right? Like you and I were talking, it's like I remember one time you said, "Mark, I'm just an enigma. You got to get used to it. I'm just an enigma."
Well, I have some stories, but I just had one recently with a gentleman, but I don't know how much I can share on this PG rated up. I have to keep it a bit PG, but I asked some insane question out of the blue. As you get older, you always sort of talk about your medicine and your medications and your health and everything. And I asked some insane question, and everybody in the room just went like, "What?" And to me, it was the most logical thing to ask when you're 60 years old, right? But anyways,
I love that. Anyway, that's so awesome. So listen, we're gonna keep chatting here for a while longer, but I want to let you all know a couple of things. One is if you're listening today, and thanks, Rose, you're always so good at being on and commenting, and so I'm seeing your comments, and I appreciate it. And we want this to be interactive. So we do want people to engage live, but it'll also be a podcast. So it'll go on all the streaming channels, whatever, on an ongoing basis after the fact as well. And what we're going to do is we want to cover a multitude of conversations and have empowering conversations with different people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and all that kind of stuff. And some weeks might just be Chris and I talking about a particular subject, but most of the time we'll probably have some form of a guest or even a pre-recorded interview that we'll play while we're live, and then we'll debrief it together as we go, and then you guys can chip in with your comments as well. And I know I've got a couple already ready to go, and they're just like really exciting conversations. And so we're going to talk about all kinds of things. We're going to talk about business relationships. We're going to talk about family relationships. We're going to talk about friendships like we are today. We're going to talk about how to have a healthy relational culture in your home and in your workplace. And in your neighborhood. That's really, I believe, Chris, I don't know how you, but I really believe that we have a relationship crisis going on in the world. I think COVID unveiled that or unearthed the problems that we're having. But even in the business world, you're in the business world, relationships are so important, and yet nobody seems to want to, be loyal or take them seriously.
Yeah, we find in business, we still talk about that mantra, which is a high level of truth, right? And that is relationships are key. People buy from people. There's enough products out there and everything, but people buy from people. And why would you buy from that individual? It's because something struck between the two of you, whether it was, a quick, you're building a quick, short relationship or anything, but there was a connection point and everything like that. And it's interesting, but when we look at the business side real quick, like we're finding that in, my generation, our generation, the new buyer, the new person that's making decisions in business nowadays is 30 years old. Right. Yeah. And then when we talk about building a relationship, we have enough stats to talk about the fact that they don't ever want to talk to anybody. They've done all their own research. and they want a frictionless experience, which means they don't really want to interact with anybody. So the question is then where does relationship and business go at this particular point?
Yeah.
Well, you talk about this a lot, Mark, and that is we still can't fight human nature. We can't fight the way God has created people, for those that, believe in that type of a thing. And the fact of the matter is that you can't fight human nature, which is the desire to be connected.
Yeah.
The desire to be heard, right? And so it's a whole new way of doing things. I sell technology that literally eliminates your ability or your need to actually talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And you get what you want.
Stop doing that.
What was that?
I said, stop doing that. No.
I'm an enigma. Okay. I'm an enigma. Okay.
But it's true, because of the technology, people don't have to connect at a level emotionally that we did in our generation. Like, you can literally you can put whatever persona you want online and nobody knows what's real, what's not real. But also, I think that there's a lot of lonely people, and you're totally right, Chris. The built-in hardwired need for community and connection is not going anywhere. So this is why I think we see the friction and the rub for young people today, is that they desperately want connection, but they don't know how to connect. And I think that is why podcasts and these platforms are really healthy in one way. Like, here we're on it because I want somebody to listen to this that might grab a hold of a principle or a story that we've told, and find their friend, find their bestie for 30 years, and that they can really connect with. And yet it's so difficult for so many to do right now. And that's why I've devoted my whole life to this, because I think that the world is in crisis because of this friction of wanting to have autonomy, be behind the screen, but still wanting connection and wanting to be in community. And it's a real confusing thing for a lot of people. And so I want to just, on this podcast, we want to talk about those things honestly and openly and transparently. And we're not scared of any subject, but we really need to talk about these things.
Absolutely. And again, for those that are listening live right now, I'm not sure if you agree with what Mark and I are talking about, but I'd encourage any comments or thoughts that you would have in terms of, are you seeing what we're seeing in terms of, the way that relationships are deteriorating or, becoming less and less important, but yet so desirable?
Yeah.
I think, like in us, is it just because our generation was very relational, so then all of a sudden that means you and I, Mark, can have a 30-year relationship? But what is it like nowadays if you're 22 or 28? What is it, why is that stopping? So anyways, if you've got some questions, we'd love to have that as we continue on in our little banter here with us. And by the way, are we going to be, by the way, Mark, are we going to be talking about, because we talk about relationships and human connection, but there are also factors that can play that enhance the relationship and completely destroy it. And I think you said we're going to talk one about finances, eh?
Yeah. So I think next week what we're going to do is we're going to play a video. I interviewed a family finance coach from Africa, actually, and she had some really interesting thoughts on it. But we know for a fact that finances absolutely are a killer of relationships. When there's financial tension in a home, in a family, it actually can be very, very painful. And I've seen a lot of families blow apart because of financial problems. And a lot of those could have been solved if they had a good financial plan. And so, yes, we're going to talk about the things around it. We have one interview that I'm going to play in a few weeks here, where it's a neurodiverse family. So the couple, like one has autism, on the autism spectrum, and the other one isn't. And how do they relate? So there's lots of people out there that can relate to these kinds of conversations. We're going to talk about depression and talk about how it affects relationships. We're going to talk about shame. Oh my goodness, shame. I do a whole course on shame. In fact, if anybody wants to, you can go to my website markgordon.ca. There it is on the bottom there. And I have courses on there, but one of them is called shadow boxing, punching shame in the face. Shame is such an incredible destroyer of relationships, and your relationship with your creator, but you're also your relationship with yourself and others. And so when you have shame in the mix of a marriage, boy, it is really tough. And so, yes, thanks for bringing that up, Chris. We are going to talk about all kinds of subjects around relationships, what hurts them, what helps them, and whatnot. And hopefully we're going to have some conversations with business people to address what you brought up today. Like, we want to address that. Like, how do businesses respond to this new generation? There's a lot of talk out there about the generational breaches, and I believe the bridge between culture and values in a company is relationships. So I really believe that if leaders in companies can become good and become really learn how to have flourishing relationships within the company, that's gonna be a differentiator for them. They're gonna stand out because of that. And so let's talk about it. Let's get that on the table. If you're listening today and you want to enter that conversation, let us know. We can always have you on as a guest and we can talk about it. And so sometimes we'll have live guests, sometimes we'll have recordings, but every Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to be coming on. We've changed the format this year again. Very first year I did it live. Then we went away to just recorded. This year I felt like with Chris and I coming together doing this, we'll do it live regardless of whether we have to pre-record an interview or not, and then we'll digress it. We'll break it down. But also, we may have just live guests right on this.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about I'm going to put my light there. Look at that. I'm really excited about this financial one, because when you look at the crux of, I just mentioned about how, in 38 years of marriage, the financial one was when we finally unlocked that or cracked that code, which took us 20 some odd years before that happened. So think of 20 years of just like this in a relationship.
Well, I remember you guys. I remember the fights that you've had in you and Lori over the finances and over the pressure that came with the finances. It wasn't that you're fighting each other; it's that you were fighting the pressure, but then it looked and felt like you were fighting each other.
Oh, and if you're going to come to that podcast, whatever it comes, folks, don't think it's going to be about how to put a budget together. Like that's all spreadsheet stuff at the end of the day. I feel that part of my wife and I's story is a very powerful part, because it literally cracked the code to the line of communication. And I won't get into it today. I don't want to give it away, but I think that is, again, we have these little tiny foxes that try to weave their way into our lives, right? And kind of nit and pick and steal of the stuff that we have. And we don't see them because they're tiny. They can be so tiny and everything like that. But, in turning back to you and I, as a couple of guys who've had a 30 plus year relationship and everything like that, again, I still feel it's just, I'll talk quickly about men again, is that when men can find a group, and you see it more and more online, guys getting together and having discussions about anything and everything and feeling that they're safe enough to do that. And that guard of the pride and I must be a warrior all the time. Listen, I'm a guy. I'm a warrior for my family. I will, nobody comes to my family unless they come through me, right? And I am a warrior. And I am built on strength and power when it comes to things that are important. But at the same time, I can't have that play a role in my own way of doing things and being too proud to need help and too proud to sit down and have a conversation. Too proud. I mean, shucks, I think I cried more in the last 10 years than I cried all my life, even as a baby. So, I mean, I know that sounds all vulnerable and everything like that, but, I think you and I have shared some very deep moments like that. And again, we go back to, what does that look like in a relationship, especially for men? I think it's very powerful. And
Yeah. The other thing that I think, the iron sharpening iron concept, I think the other thing that you and I both learned together, is even because we could hold each other accountable and call each other out, I think it made us better husbands, made us better fathers. Like, we can bring those kinds of things to each other. So that's why it's so important for, men to have male friends and women to have female friends, a place not to just go and vent and talk badly about your spouse, but a place that you can say, what am I doing wrong here? What do I need to do? Or to vent and then, but be able to receive correction, course
Hey, Mark,
correction.
I don't know if you can see. Can you see all these virtual scars all over my face? That's you punching me in the face virtually on the phone because I was such a dingbat in some of the things I had to do in my relationship and everything like that. And you know what? We go back, you said something powerful. The fact that you could stand up to me as a friend and say, Dollinger, stop the madness. And I'm like, no, you don't know, Mark. You don't know anything. You don't know any better. You haven't been in that situation. And you're like, Dollinger, bam, uppercut, haymaker on me, like that type of thing, like this. And having me get, ultimately put in my place, even though I'm going to fight you tooth and nail to deny the fact that I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I think if I learned something out of that, and something I use quite a bit now, and I think if I learned something about that when it came to, for example, my wife and I have the greatest marriage, and so on and so forth. But let's not kid each other. There isn't anybody out there that has the perfect relationship or has gone through some ups and downs and everything like that.
Absolutely.
But a valuable lesson that I got taught as you were like swinging the haymakers virtually on me and everything like that was, Chris, do you want to be right or do you want to keep a friend? What's more important? My wife would leave her shoes everywhere in the house, every single place. There's shoes. And she loves to leave the lights on because we want to finance the power companies even more than ever by turning every little light on in the house 24/7. And what did I do all the time in that? I think you've experienced it with me, to you doing the same. Why are you always doing that? Is every time the light goes on, hey, Lori, the light is on. Click. Hey, Lori, are these all your shoes in the hallway? Like this and everything. And what was she thinking every time I did that? She's rolling her eyes like this, like, come on. And when you told me one time with that, you said, do you want to be right or do you want to keep a friend? So I learned that lesson I just turned the lights off and put the shoes away. Don't say a single thing. Just didn't even make a stink about it. And that little piece, even with what you and I have gone through, that, Chris, do you want to be right with Mark Gordon and say, you got to run your business this way, and I'm the business executive, and da-da-da-da-da, and, like that, and so on and so forth. So all I can say is, I don't know why I brought that up. It just came off my head. That's just,
I like
there you
it.
go. Boom.
I like it because I think it speaks to what we're talking about. It speaks to the fact that, we all have blind spots. We all have things that we're doing because that's exactly the question to ask. What is Lori feeling in those moments when you're saying, hey, you left the light on again? Is this your shoe? First of all, sarcasm, by the way, is 86% of the time is actually a form of anger. So, and then resentment is frozen anger. So you can develop resentment over it, or you can get over it. if you want to be angry all the time. So how many times have you and her got into an argument and then found out later that the argument had nothing to do with what was bugging you? It was a cause and effect because you were irritated or resentful, frozen anger about the lights and the shoes. You actually, maybe she said something completely different, or you're in a situation that's nothing to do with those things, and all of a sudden you get mad at each other, you blow up. That's why I said to you, you want a friend, a wife, or do you want to be right? And so where it comes in is we want to serve one another. That's what friendship's about, is serving one another. And so it's the same in marriage. We want to serve one another. And I think when you absolutely realize that, then you can have the you can actually grow and learn Gary Chupik's on, which is great. He's going to be a guest this season. He's always a guest because I have high regard for him. But he says this: iron sharpens iron, but only at the right angle.
Oh, well
Ooh,
said. Well said.
that's a whole discussion on itself. It's so true, Gary, because I've also had friends that have walked away, but I realized later maybe my angle was wrong. That's a great statement, because maybe it wasn't that they abandoned me. Maybe I had the wrong angle on my iron sharpening iron. That's such a valuable lesson. It's really important. How do you get the right angle? Communication. We need to know each other so well, Chris. We know each other so well. I don't even actually have to give you an uppercut and a punch anymore, because as soon as you say something and you look at me or you listen, I know what Gordon's going to say about this. I live in your head now, because we know each other so well. We don't have to, but it's because of all the communication. How many times do we have to explain to each other what we really were feeling or what we really meant? And I think that that's really important when we talk about iron sharpening iron. Find the right angle together. There's certain things that I won't say to you because I know it would actually hurt you. It would destroy you. So if I came at you too hard, that would be useless. That wouldn't have any benefit at all. And so it's also about knowing when to push back, knowing when to challenge, and then other times just being quiet and love the person where they're at.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. That's so good. So good. Thank you so much for that. That was, you took us into a really good place there. So we've learned a lot of things today about friendship, and I want to encourage you as you're listening here that friendships are so valuable. Listen, we've all been hurt by people. Hurt. Yeah, I always hear hurt people, right? But I also know this, that blessed people bless people, and healthy people bring health to people. So I really want to encourage you that, like, because you've been hurt once does not mean that you have to write off every relationship or isolate. That's exactly what the enemy of your soul wants. He wants you to isolate and be alone and be lonely. And you don't have to be, folks. You can actually find a friend who will walk through you with anything. And it doesn't mean you're not going to have disagreements. Chris and I have had our share of disagreements, but we've always held the relationship above the disagreement. And that's why I trust him. That's why he trusts me. That's why when we do say something, when I do stop him and say, Chris, you got to hear this. Or he says, Mark, listen to me here. You did that a couple of weeks ago about something. We were talking about somebody and something in a situation, and you said, Mark, listen to me. You got to hear this. And it was right, because I can err on being too gracious and being taken advantage of. And so it's really that iron sharpening iron. I love that, Gary. Thank you. Iron sharpens iron, but only at the right angle.
Yeah, and the other thing about, relationships too, and I'll say this, I won't get into detail today about it, but I tell you, today at work, across the country, for the people that I work with and deal with, and everything like that, today was a real test of relationships. Oh my goodness.
Right.
If you ever could put the hidden camera, like, let's just do a day in the life of Chris Dollinger, I'm stomping around. Everybody's a dingbat, da 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 da, rah rah rah, like this and everything. Because I'm losing my mind on everything like this. These are things and people that I work with or that I'm engaged with on a regular basis. And somehow today said, let's make it trigger day for Chris. That on everything everybody says, everybody's out of control, right? Like this. And so I'm running around, and I got to run over to a corner for a second and take a couple of breaths, because I can't type the email right away, because if I do, I'm just going to end up dropping bombs on everybody. You know how I get, Mark, and everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's also about learning, a little bit about how to handle those tough moments in relationships. You and I have aggravated each other. There's no doubt about it. You just mentioned it, and a lot of times in good relationships, you can stand up and there's a certain way that you can say it and you can be head on and everything like that. But I think you also have to just be able to find a way, a mechanism that says to myself, I just got this email and I'm like, I literally just want to type 3 paragraphs on how stupid you are, and please answer my question, right? And if any of my corporate people are listening, no, I'm not talking about you, okay? Right? I'm not talking about you, all right? Just want
It's
to
the
put that
other guy.
disclaimer.
It's the other
Yeah,
one.
it's other people, okay? Not anybody like that. But it's how you deal with it. And this is a learning process for me still, because
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever known this, because Lori says this about me, and a few people have said I still struggle with it. I'm apparently I'm a reactionary.
Yeah, it's an
Oh,
understatement.
my wife's upstairs. My wife's upstairs. She's going, yes. So she heard. Oh. So it's also about learning how to react properly,
Yeah.
and then also in the friendship. And how would
Respond.
you deal with that reaction, right? Do you go and take it personal because you got 30 years with me? Do you take it personal? Oh, here goes, or do you know that there's just a piece of DNA in there that ain't going to change necessarily overnight? And so I will look past that piece of DNA and just realize that, that's just Dollinger doing his thing, right?
Well, sometimes it's not about you. We make it about us, but maybe you're ranting and raving because of other pressures that has nothing to do with the person you're ranting and raving with. And so your reactions are more about you than they are about the other person. I always tell people, don't take responsibility for someone else's behavior. And that's exactly what you do when you react to somebody else's behavior. It's like now you're taking the responsibility on and you still don't get a solution. And now you've given your power away. You've given it over to the other person. So rather than that, just try and understand, take a curiosity position on rather than like a defensive one. Just be curious. Okay, what's going on in their life today that they're reacting this way? What's happening with them? Maybe I can help them. Maybe I can get into a helper position instead of, a healing position rather than a judgment position. And so that's exactly it. There's always a reason we are reacting. And I will say this too, coming out of work with the kind of day you had, that's where it's so important for people, like, take a breath and switch gears, because now you're home. Like, once you leave your office there, you're at home, and you have to put the other hat on. You can't bring that frustration from work into your relationships at home. And it's so important to be able to switch and shift. And one of the ways you can do that is by telling your wife, hey, I had a really rough day today, and I just want you to know that, and I'm so glad to be home with you. That will.
But Mark, even if you bring it home, like again, let's just say we're not perfect, right? Yeah. And again, the power of relationship, good relationship, healthy relationship, is for you. Then Lori may not be in the mood to listen to Chris Dollinger's ding dong conversation again and everything like that. But in the relationship that we have, she'll allow me to spew like, Mount St. Helens, and know that it's not personal to her. And just because I'm a guy, I'm a venter, right? Lori is a hold it in, and then after 2,000 years, it just type of thing. But I'm just like, as soon as it happens, I'm like those memes about everybody reacting, like this. I think it's also just remembering, though, that when you're grounded in a good relationship, like we've done this in our conversations, is Chris is off doing his thing, and you can sit there and try to fix it, or you can try to, talk me off the ledge or whatever that is, and everything like that is, but just to listen, let it happen, don't take it personal, and then we just move on, right? And that's, if you take it home every day and all you do is beak off every day because that's how it is, well, that's a different problem. We talk about that. Mark, I don't know how long these podcasts, this is our first one. Is it top of the hour that we finish, or is it 7 minutes left?
We can end at any time, but we aim for about an hour. But you make a good point there. I remember even with Sandy's she's internal, I'm external. And I remember one time we got in an argument and she just wasn't talking, and I was trying to draw it out of her. And okay, then you want to know? And she said what it was, and it was something that I'd done 5 years previous. It's like 5 years ago. But she was holding it in all that time, and I had done something that day that reminded her of it. And so, cause and effect, baby. It's
cause and effect, my friend. But we were talking about us having a conversation, and I hope folks out there are tracking with us a little bit. I know it's a bit haywire and everything, but if you like a roller coaster ride, join us every week, because it's just going to get better. But what was some of the other things we talked about? I know you had asked me a question about what do I know that annoys me about you?
Yeah.
Like, what annoy me about? And
Yeah,
I thought
so
about it at the time, and I thought, oh no, Mark's my best friend. He does not annoy me at all. And then all of a sudden, I remembered a few things, and and so I will, again, when we talk about how relationships work, right? What
yeah.
annoys me a lot about you, and this is going to sound strange, is the simple fact that you say yes to everything. Say yes to every single thing. And I always
Yeah, I get
say
where.
that it's easy to say yes, but it takes courage to say no.
Oh,
And
that's a good one.
the thing about it is, when you say yes all the time, it can put you into all kinds of situations and everything like that. And yet, I remember in the early days, the way I'm going to do that as a friend and as a man is, I'm going to fix Mark. Let me fix Mark so that he doesn't. Let me make him be stand up for himself, and all of a sudden like that. And I'm trying to get you to like toughen up and everything. And you know what? It's not so much about that you say yes to everything. Yeah, I'm your God friend, and I see it in the background, and I'm like, oh, here goes Mike. He's put himself in a situation again. Because I mean, you're a servant, so yes is an automatic reaction to servant, right? At the end of the day, it's just that
No, but if I'm
you
honest, Chris, if I'm honest, yes, in the purest form, when my heart's good, I love serving people. I love, helping people. But I can also say that there was something in me for years that needed to be needed. So there was something in me that was fed when I was able to help people, or because they would say that I helped them, and it was not healthy. And so to have you challenge me at that sometimes, like you would, you'd point it out and say, "What are you doing, Gordon? What the heck? Like, why are you saying yes to that?" And it was because you were picking up on something that I wasn't seeing. It was my blind spot. And thank the Lord, I've dealt with that now for the most part. And so much better, but I will own that for sure. You're right. Because when I say yes to other things, it means I'm saying no to you, a friend, or no to my wife and my kids. And I've come to realize that a well-placed no gives you opportunity for a better yes.
Very well said. Exactly. And if everybody's got an additional 46 minutes of their day to spend, why don't we talk about what annoys you about me? Because I think there's a laundry list, isn't there?
Well, yeah, we'd have to have 10 podcasts to get through all of that, but kidding. The one thing, okay, so since you gave me one, I'll give you one. The one thing is that when you get excited about something and you start to do it, and then you don't follow through, and then you blame someone else or me for not following through. You find a reason why it couldn't happen. That drives me crazy.
Oh, I tell you, I'm a fire starter. I'm a catalyst to get things going, but sometimes, a lot of times, finishing ain't so hot with I always took the lawnmower apart as a kid, but my dad would get mad because I couldn't put it back together. I had no stamina or fortitude to do that, so it lay in pieces. I don't know how to fix that, by the way. Maybe you and I can have a conversation. Maybe you can fix that in me, but yeah, I can see that for sure.
Oh, that's the same answer you had. It's not for me to fix. It's not for me to fix anything. It's just part of your personality. It's part of who you are. It's for me to accept you. It's for me to accept you for who you are. And when when the iron sharpening iron, and it's at the right angle, then I can tell you, whoa, it just
You're glitching pretty bad there you're glitching
there
a little
for a second.
Yeah, is Sandy playing video games and she's sucking up all the bandwidth?
I think, yeah, I don't think so, but I'm losing some bandwidth here. So maybe
Mark, don't let her hear that.
I'll tell her. Rory asking the question, "What annoys you about me?" That's annoying. So he doesn't want to hear about it.
He doesn't want to hear
Thanks,
about annoying.
Rory. Oh, now he's asking me, Mark. Now look at what he's asking me. He's saying, Mark Gordon, what would you say my blind spot is? Well, Rory, we'll have a conversation about that offline. But thank you for the question. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. We really appreciate it. This is just the episode 1 of season 3. We wanted you to hear Chris and my story. He's going to be the co-host this year for this. And I don't actually have a season ending in mind. We just want to go on Fridays. Maybe the odd Friday we can't make it. I'll try to have a recorded thing to go. But we really, really want to have a good time. We want you to grab a hold of some real key principles in relationships, which you've heard today. Go back and listen to this again. Share it out. If you have somebody you know that really needs to learn what friendship's all about and the value of friendship, by all means, send them this video. Please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're on Facebook or on LinkedIn, make sure you follow me and like me. And then also remember my website is markgordon.ca, and you can find me there. And I have courses on there. I've got links to all my social media, and you can find other.
Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
Wow. Shameless plug. Relationship Matters. My book is also, you can order it through the website. And so make sure you get a copy. Chris read it and it helped his marriage. And so, thanks, Chris. Thanks for doing this with me. This is going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Everybody, we'll see you next Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Talk to you later.